Welcome to you at home and welcome to our studio audience. This is the Evidence series, and in this programme we're looking at the meaning of life. It's a big question, but we're going to try and tackle it. I'm one of your hosts, Gillian Joseph, and I can tell you we've got lots of treats in store for you tonight, including the fantastic Ken Burton and his wonderful orchestra. Thank you very much, Ken. And Dwight Nelson is here. Now, Dwight, the meaning of life, it's a huge question.
It's enormous. The only way we're going to get a handle on it, Gillian, is if we ask the question, what is the meaning of meaning?
What does my life mean? Does it mean anything at all? We're born, we give birth, we die. Is there anything more than that? Maybe life has no meaning. Or maybe life is just an empty void. And if meaning is found, doesn't death destroy it? Some people say our lives are full of meaning. Others say that our purpose is to find what that meaning is. But if I want to find meaning, where would I focus?
Did you catch those words? But if I find meaning, where do I focus? Now, Linda Ward, we met just a few moments ago. You've been on an enormous journey in your life looking for meaning. Where did you turn in your search?
I think all my life I've been looking in different areas, depending in a way what age I was. I think when I was younger, it was in school, it was achieving in school, it was passing exams. At university, it was getting a good degree. Falling in love and getting married.
Now, are you finding meaning all along the way in those experiences?
The hope of the meaning is always there, that this is what's going to really be, this is going to make it real, this is going to be some point. And I'm not saying I've been miserable, but I've been aware that it didn't quite make what I was looking for, which was obviously not exactly material.
You were looking for some kind of point, and you never came to it.
Some sort of point that was added more to it. And looking around me and gaining things and being lucky in my life and having a pretty good life, I still wondered, is this it? What is the point of it? What is the point of things I've achieved or people have said I've achieved?
So you journey through life. Have you ever found it? You still looking?
I have found it quite recently.
Really?
And it's actually having faith. I've discovered that that has given my life and things that I do with my life a meaning.
The journey still goes on?
The journey still goes on incredibly, but the point is that now the journey is making sense of the things that I'm doing. There's a goal, it seems to make sense of what I've been given to do here and my life. Thank
you, Linda. The journey does go on. And Gillian, as a part of that journey, this next piece plugs straight into it. Take it away.
Absolutely, and I believe, I've got strong faith that you're going to find this the most exciting saxophonist you've ever heard, because I do. Mark Bunny. Hi. Now, you're going to perform for us God and God Alone. Now, it's always very easy when they're lyrics to sing along and get into a song. How do you communicate purely with an instrumental?
Well, this song always reminds me of just how powerful and amazing and awesome God really is. And so I hope tonight to convey that to the listeners.
I'm sure you will. Take it away. That was a round of applause. The fantastic Mark Bunny. I told you you'd enjoy it. Absolutely brilliant. Well, with music, we raise certain questions about meaning, lots of different types of questions. We also use art as a way of raising questions about meaning. And I've got with me a very talented photographer, John Challicombe, who basically tries to establish meaning through photography. Is that right?
That's right, yes. We're very privileged living here in the West, living here in England, but we're very affluent and we're very well educated, etc. Yes, people aren't as fortunate as us in various parts of the world. I try and find meaning in life by making pictures of people who are less fortunate.
We've got some photography here.
Than ourselves. I've worked extensively in Europe over the last 3 or 4 years, mainly focusing on issues to do with elderly people, handicapped, etc., etc.
There's some shots here of the time that you spent in a hospice for children.
That's right, the baby hospice. So is the baby hospice in
Now,
Liverpool,
at first sight, that might be a quite depressing situation. What did you glean from
very
that?
much. We think of ill children as a very sad subject, which in some ways it is, but the baby hospice is an amazing place. It's full of happiness, full of joy. Children are very, very ill. Yet the staff and parents work very hard to make every moment of the baby's lives as important as possible, as fulfilled as possible.
Now, how do you personally gain meaning from the pictures that you take, from the work that you do?
I gain meaning from the fact that I'm very privileged to be able to work with these people, to become friends with them, and see how strong they are, often in tragic times, see how they cope and get over things.
John, thank you very much.
Great,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
bringing your work in from Telecom there. Now, life is experienced in very many different ways. What's your experience? Where do you find meaning? I find meaning in my faith, in my children, and in my husband. I have to say that one. Didn't get a laugh there, but I've got one now. Where do you find meaning?
What gives my life meaning? My children.
My husband, my family.
L'amour. L'amour.
My partner, Jason.
Friends, relations, travel, see new things, experience new things.
Theater. Theater und nochmals Theater.
And to know that there is one special person who loves you, no matter if it's family or a friend or your partner, husband, whoever.
Challenge.
Challenge.
Challenge. Opportunities give it meaning as well. And people.
Pa smisao mog života je pre svega uspešnost u privatnom životu, zatim karijera. Znači, pogotovo što se ja bavim glumom, inače pa me to jako interesuje i ne znam, meni je gluma recimo sve u životu, pa onda znači ostalo. Znači, jednostavno, smisao života je pokušati maksimalno da uradiš ono što neki svoj cilj u stvari da ostvariš, znači maksimalno da uspeš u tome. I onda je to jednostavno ostvareni život.
You need objectives in life to keep your mind running.
Daily experiences, I think. It comes sometimes, but then it gets over again. I feel happy.
Now, imagine that your life as you know it is taken away from you. You can no longer move any part of your body. You can't eat, you can't feed yourself, you can't even bathe yourself. How would you find meaning in that new life?
My name is Michael Watson. In the ring, I was known as the Fourth, and the Fourth has never left me. I am a boxer, and I love boxing. But my life changed dramatically on September 21st, 1991, when I collapsed after my super middleweight contest against Chris Eubank. They operated on me to remove a blood clot from my brain, and I floated in a coma for 40 days and 40 nights. They didn't expect me to live. When I left hospital, I couldn't walk or talk. I was paralysed down my left side, and I had lost half the function of my brain. In 1999, my new surgeon said that I would never run again, never move my left side, walk or speak smoothly, and that to cross every room on foot is for me like a marathon. But on the 13th of April 2003, I completed the London Floor Marathon. I walked 26 miles over 6 days. It is my greatest ever sporting feat. Come closer. Bring your thumb more forward. The four. The four. Did you feel the four? What's new? My greatest life achievement though had been finding a meaning in my life. For my life, and I knew it was taken from me. I couldn't talk. I couldn't express my feelings or anguish or happiness, anger or depression. I relied on others to feed me, to bath me, to move my body for me. I had long, lonely nights with just my thoughts for company. But what got me through was my faith in Jesus. I can do all things with Jesus Christ.
What a moving story.
Amazing.
Yeah.
I'm just so humbled.
And you know him.
Yes, I had the privilege to meet him, and he's very keen to stress that his achievements are nothing to do with him. He's very keen to stress that. And the fantastic thing about him, he did that marathon with the boxer who dealt him that blow.
Paralyzed, he did
the walk, the marathon that he did. He walked with the actual boxer that actually struck the blow.
I suppose, with the man who hit him.
Exactly. That's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose if anybody would have the right to say, I've lost purpose and meaning in life,
Sure.
I just should end it all, it would be Michael. And yet, Peter Hammond, here you are, because you are a gentleman who deals with people who have come to that very moment.
Absolutely, yes.
They're convinced there's no other reason to go on living. You're vice chair for volunteers at Samaritan Organization.
That's right.
How many volunteers?
We've got about 18,500.
18,500 volunteers. You head up that volunteer organization.
Yeah.
What's the purpose of Samaritan?
We're there because people do need to have somebody to contact, need someone to communicate with, often somebody who's anonymous to them, and they need that 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we provide that.
So it's a 24-hour suicide hotline. Would that be the case?
It started off as a suicide hotline. We've moved more now into emotional support because we realise that when you're at rock bottom, you're probably less likely to seek help. You need to start a bit further back on the spiral. So we want to try to reach people before they get to that stage now.
Because suicide is the ultimate expression of meaninglessness, isn't it?
It is, yes, and it's completely final.
And the statistics here in the UK?
Yeah, one attempt every couple of minutes and one actual suicide every couple of hours.
Every 2 hours?
Yeah.
Somebody runs out of hope.
They do, yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Peter, why is it that here in the West we seem to turn to suicide, and perhaps in developing countries where things are a lot tougher, when people can't eat, they don't take that option?
Yeah, I think probably it's that the pace of life has become so much more now, and there's so much that people are expected to aspire to, and maybe we've lost the personal touch over the years. I mean, how often do people walk down the street and say, "Hi, how are you?" The response they want is, "I'm okay, thanks." Carry on walking. They don't perhaps want to talk about it.
So, Peter, I call you up.
Yeah.
I'm going to take my life in 3 minutes. What can you do for me, sir?
I say, I'm really glad that you contacted us, and I feel quite humbled that you chose to spend those last 3 minutes with us. We're talking about that 3 minutes. How does it make you feel?
So you're asking me, you will ask me what I'm feeling, what I'm going through.
Yeah. And the important thing is to show somebody respect, not to be shocked and to try to say, no, you mustn't do that, because that's not going to work. You need to value what the decision that person has made.
Because the person feels, I suppose a person coming to suicide, ultimate despair, feels no value at all.
Absolutely, yes. It's often... it's like physical health. If you're physically healthy and then something hits you, you can perhaps deal with that. Same with emotional health. If you've lost it all and then something really bad hits you, you've got no foundation. And so that's when people feel that they just don't want to go on any longer.
And in our postmodern society where we are in this rat race to survive, less and less meaningful interaction. People aren't listening to me.
They're not, no.
I love the motto that you have at Samaritans.
That's right, yeah. We have one mouth and two ears, and it's really a good idea to use it at least in that proportion. And people
twice as much listening.
Twice as much listening.
Yeah, I like that.
And we try to button our mouth and just keep our ears open, and that's what people need.
Peter, how do you cope when you have a down day, when perhaps you need somebody to listen to you, but you've got to go in and be the ears for other people?
Yeah, I actually am very lucky because although I don't call Samaritans, I've got lots of Samaritan friends who I can call, so it's the same thing really. But I think it's very important to remember that if I'm going to go on duty and take calls from people, I need to be as emotionally healthy as I can. It's not good for them if I go on duty feeling really down. So I need to identify whether I'm on a good day or not such a good day. And I have got people that I can speak to, and I've really found a lot of comfort from that.
So we have somebody watching on television right now who says, you know, I'm that close to it myself. Your counsel to that person would be?
To get in touch with us. You can phone us, visit us, or email us.
You got a website?
We have, yes.
Okay,
it's
we'll put it on the screen right now.
Samaritans.
All right.
And there's all of our contact information on that. Yeah.
And finally, is there any way, just living in my little neighborhood, I can actually help prevent somebody from coming to that ultimate state of meaninglessness and despair?
Yes, I think we all can. Although there's 18,500 people called Samaritans, there's millions doing Samaritan work. And it's identifying people, be aware of people, spend a little bit of time with somebody and listen to what they've got to say and value them.
Just walking down the sidewalk.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Peter Hammond, so nice to have you. Keep
Thank you very much.
lifting that despair.
We'll do. Thank you.
Glad you came to The Evidence.
Thank you.
This next song we're going to hear is called It Is Cold. It's going to be performed by Pamela and Belinda, sisters from Belgrade. Belinda, you wrote the song. Tell us what it's about.
Well, it talks about my belief that if you have everything in this world and you don't have God, then it's of no worth.
Now, It Is Cold, isn't that a depressing title?
Well, it does talk about the dark and gloomy side of life, but I think that in the end it comes out into the light.
Ladies and gentlemen, Belinda and Pamela.
It's raining outside, the sky is grey, and our clouds gather round as I pray. That's the story of my life, that's a feeling deep inside when I am not near you, Lord. I know that it's always me who always leaves, yet you wait so patiently. Without you, it's so cold.
Thank you, Belinda. It's so cold, taking the ultimate expression of meaninglessness, beautifully rendered. Speaking of meaninglessness, did you grew up with a story, Greek mythology, of Sisyphus? Remember that story? That poor chap, unfortunate, condemned by the gods for some offense. I don't know what the offense was. But the punishment was that he was to push a boulder, a massive boulder. You remember that? Up to the top, the summit of a mountain. Only when Sisyphus got to the top of that pinnacle, the very weight of the boulder tumbled back on him, crashed down into the valley. Have you heard that little bit of Greek mythology? You heard that? Yeah. And so he gets back down to the valley and he pushes it back up, you remember, to the pinnacle? It rolls back down again. Back up to the top, back down again, on and on forever. And the Greek myth was intended to teach that there could be no worse punishment than fruitless, futile, meaningless labor. Does your life ever feel like that? 2,000 years plus later, along comes a Frenchman named Albert Camus. You heard of Camus? Yeah, the philosopher. And he wrote a book. Title of the book, The Myth of Sisyphus. It was written actually during the Nazi occupation of France. And the book used the tale of Sisyphus as a metaphor. A metaphor for what? A metaphor for human life itself. Now, that might seem unduly pessimistic. It's true. But there really was a logic behind Camus' embracing of this metaphor. In essence, here's Camus' point. Number one, there is no God. All right? So number two, let's put it on the screen here. Number two, there is no transcendence. There's nothing outside of us. It's all right here in me. Number three, therefore, there is no meaning or purpose to life. And therefore, why is life worth living? If all the energy, all the effort, all the passion needed for Sisyphus labor to get that hopeless, futile act accomplished, if it all rolls back on you in the end, who cares? Camus began his book with some of the most famous lines of the 20th century. Let me put them on the screen as well. Listen to this. There is but one truly serious philosophical problem, and that is suicide. We just talked about suicide a moment ago. Judging whether life is or is not worth living amounts to answering the fundamental question of philosophy. Greatest question on earth, shall we commit suicide or not? Rather pessimistic, to be sure. But Camus says, no. Stay with me. The logic of his reasoning. Look, there is no God, nothing beyond this life. The trials, the pains, all the suffering we go through, in the end, what does it amount to? So in the end, Sisyphus' metaphor, embraced by Camus, suggests, and this is Albert Camus, that with no meaning, what's the point in going on at all? It's so cold, you just sang, Belinda. Why go on? Now, contrary to popular opinion, mistaken by the way, Camus never was an advocate of suicide. That wasn't his point at all. Quite frankly, I'm not totally sure what his point was. But I think it was a cry for hope. It was a cry for reason, for explanation, something that might be readily apparent why I should go on living. Camus' thinking, ladies and gentlemen, is hardly unique today. There is so much angst, isn't there? So much pessimism, so much hopelessness in this world. And I suppose we have good reason for it. Look, we got poverty, we've got disease, we've got war. But beyond the obvious, what Camus is struggling with is this issue of meaninglessness that we as human beings today in the third millennium wrestle with. Fact of the matter is, I think you and I would agree, you can deal with almost anything, no matter how hard it is, if you can know that that boulder's not going to come rolling back on you and you can get beyond this point. But Camus comes along and says, wait a minute, you can't. Reminds me of the words of an American writer named Jack Kerouac. He wrote these lines back in the 1950s, and they capture where I want to go with you tonight. Put the words on the screen for you. I have traveled 8,000 miles around the American continent, and I was back in Times Square and right in the middle of rush hour, too, seeing with my innocent road eyes the absolute madness and fantastic hurrah of New York, with millions and millions hustling forever for a buck among themselves, the mad dream grabbing, taking, giving, sighing, dying, just so they could be buried in those awful cemetery cities beyond the Long Island city, end quote. Did you catch that? Just so that they could be buried in those awful cemetery cities beyond the Long Island city. Is that what we have to look forward to? Some city, the cemetery city beyond London, beyond Berlin, beyond Tokyo. Is that it? Camus says, well, you better think it probably is all there is. For a moment, I want you to wrestle with me here, thinking about the prevailing scientific model for life on this planet. Think with me. By the way, this is a little preamble. I'm going to be the first to admit I am not a scientist. You've got some scientists in this audience, perhaps. I am no scientist. I make no such claim. But I want to be fair. Help me out now. You check it out. I want to describe for you the dominant model for understanding life on this planet from genuine, honest, sincere human beings who embrace this model. It's the Darwinian model. Now tell me, you correct me, stop me if I'm wrong, but doesn't the model go something like this? About 15 billion years ago, scientists are pretty agreed, there was this massive explosion in the universe that created energy and time and space and matter all at once. It's called the Big Bang, isn't that right? Yeah, you've heard of it. All right, and then atoms which formed from that explosion condensed into gaseous clouds, right? And then stars are created from these whirling strands of fire and light, and amidst this nascent cosmic panoply, molten globules cool and harden into planets, including our own planet, third rock from the sun. Correct? And after billions of years, some shallow water on this rock begins to ferment, and simple little life forms emerge, and millions of years later, yet human beings evolved. Is that a fairly simple description of the prevailing scientific model? I believe it is. Now, you think for a moment, if by chance the temperatures on this rock were slightly higher or slightly lower, or if the law of gravity were slightly weaker or slightly greater, ladies and gentlemen, according to this prevailing model, you and I would not exist, correct? But everything happened to have just turned out with the precision that is necessary. And eventually, according to this scenario, the universe that exists, there's still more. The scenario says, one day, this same universe, out of an explosion as it was created, will keep expanding and expanding and expanding until it reaches a zero energy level, and everything just sort of fades. And all the lights go out. Adios. It's over. Or an alternate theory would be that the universe will fall back in on itself and everything ends, not in a big bang, but in a big crunch. The end. Finis. Now, ladies and gentlemen, tonight I'm not going to debate cosmology, how we got here, or the various data for or against these scenarios. My question tonight is more personal and subjective. It's this. If this view, or any near variant of it, is true, as many honest people believe, then what does it mean for you and me? I mean, we are products, aren't we, of random life forces. Wouldn't that be true? Am I coloring outside of the box? Am I being unfair with this? No, no, no. We would have to be products of random chance. And then we get to the three questions of that famous pater, Paul Gauguin. Three questions. Who am I? What's the next one? Why am I here? And what's the next one? Where am I going? Let's take a look at those three questions, and now let's fit in the prevailing scientific model, and let's see how the model would answer these questions. We'll put them on the screen here. Question number one, who are we? Well, I suppose based on that model, we would say we are the culmination of chance processes that began billions and billions of years ago. No ultimate purpose, no end in mind. We're just here. Is that fair? That would answer the question, who are we? Question number two, why are we here? Now, obviously, our answer to question number two would depend on how we answer question number one, and we answer question number one, we're here by random chance, and so the answer to why are we here is because purposeless forces in the universe, by chance, put us here. Aren't we lucky? We are indeed. And question number 3, where are we going? I suppose the answer would be something like this. We are going to one of those cemetery cities outside Long Island or London or Rangoon. Correct? Yeah, it would have to be. And there we will wait until either the universe expands and the lights go out, or it crunches and we're gone. Phew. But either way, not a very attractive future. Now, folks, look, I'm not trying to parody. I'm not trying to caricature. Honest, sincere people believe and embrace those models. I'm just asking you the question, where does the model take us? With the ultimate struggle of human existence, and that is, what does my life mean? Or shall I just end it? As Peter told us a moment ago, every 2 hours somebody does in the UK. Shall I just say, this is enough? It's cold out here. The great British philosopher, you know him, Bertrand Russell. Magnificent piece of writing here. This is an extended quotation. I'm going to put it on the screen. I want you to listen carefully to what Lord Russell once wrote. By the way, I brought his wonderful book, The History of Western Philosophy, with me, and I was just reading a couple chapters this morning. Bertrand Russell, his words on the screen. That man and woman is the product of causes which had no prevision of the end they were achieving. That his origin, his growth, his hopes and fears, his loves and his beliefs are but the outcome of accidental collocations of atoms. Great use of the Queen's English. That no fire, no heroism, no intensity of thought and feeling can preserve an individual life beyond the grave. That all the noonday brightness of human genius are destined to extinction in the vast death of the solar system, and that the whole temple of man's achievement must inevitably be buried beneath the debris of a universe in ruins. All these things, Bertrand Russell writes, if not quite beyond dispute, are yet so nearly certain that no philosophy which rejects them can hope to stand. Only within, he concludes, only within the scaffolding of these truths, only on the firm foundation of unyielding despair, can the soul's habitation henceforth be safely built. To quote William Shakespeare, wow. Did Shakespeare, was he the one that came up with that quote, wow? Well, that's not Shakespearean, okay. Isn't that something? Ladies and gentlemen, I remind you, Lord Russell wrote those words. I didn't write them. And I'm thinking about Albert Camus, who obviously built his philosophy on this, as Russell put it, this scaffolding of truth. And clearly that's what so many others in modern scientific circles have done. They've done the very same thing, built it on that scaffolding. Which is why I believe that there is so much misery that goes beyond war and pain and bankruptcy. There is the misery of the human heart and mind. Is this all there is? This is it? Camus says, yep. In fact, it is the great question of philosophy whether to commit suicide or not. Albert Camus, Bertrand Russell, some of the great luminaries of the 20th century. Wow. One of the great bestsellers, one of the greatest bestsellers in the English language, was written by a psychiatrist. His name, M. Scott Peck. You've heard of him? He wrote that book. I read it, as I'm sure many of you have. The Road Less Traveled. In that book, Scott Peck begins with 3 simple little words, punchy. His opening salvo, life is difficult. Even children know that, don't they? Even our kids know. I'll never forget that night. I've got 2 kids, Karen and I do. I got Kirk, he's 24, and Kristen, she turned 18 just 2 weeks ago. 18 going on 25, by the way. You know what that's like. When Chrissy was a little girl, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 years old, She had a pet hamster. You call them hamsters over here? Same thing as a guinea pig, isn't it? Very close, okay. So she had this pet hamster. We of course, weren't sure what it was, male, female. It was just a hamster. She loved that hamster. The name of the hamster, Patches. Oh, she and Patches were inseparable. As life would turn out, one day a mortal illness fell upon that little creature. We were doing everything we could that day to somehow sustain Patches' life, but it did not look good. And when we tucked Chrissy into bed that night, you know, honey, Patches may not make it through the night. But she went to sleep believing that somehow the impossible could happen. And later in the night, Karen happened to walk by Patches' cage, and there Patches was, gone. And so it befell my lot as daddy to tiptoe back into that bedroom and sit on the side of Chrissy's bed and just kind of rub her forehead and awaken her gently, and then I have to say to her, Chrissy, I have some bad news for you. Patches didn't make it. And I will, as long as I live, never forget that look on her face as she looked straight up into my eyes. She couldn't even say anything. Her tears just brimmed over. There is no question our children know the meaning of M. Scott Peck's assertion, life is difficult. It's difficult at every stage of the human journey, isn't it? I mean, that much we can all agree on, irrespective of our worldviews. But you think about it. How much harder would life be if you had to go through that death? If you had, and folks, we're dealing with the death of a hamster. It's not great on the scale of human losses, I understand, unless you're a 5-year-old little girl. But to go through that utter tragedy, whatever it is, my friend, that you've gone through, to go through it and realize there's nothing to it. There was no purpose, there was no meaning, there's nothing beyond this, it's just finis. I mean, that's the ultimate despair. Wouldn't it be? Yeah. Then how do we justify our existence? If this is the way life ends, how are we going to justify that we even exist at all? A young reporter was sent by a big city newspaper to a home where a troubled youth of 17 had been murdered. So the young cub reporter comes into that home and he is interviewing the family, and the deceased older brother is there, and in anguish the older brother cries out, "All that for nothing, for nothing. My kid, 17-year-old brother's dead." But you know what? With Camus, it doesn't matter if you're a troubled 17-year-old youth or a wise old sage at 97. When you're gone, all that for nothing. All that for nothing. Albert Camus, Bertrand Russell, the modern scientific paradigm. You have a moment of evolved life, and then it's gone. Ladies and gentlemen, this is what the modern scientific legacy has left us. Now look, I've got dear friends who are scientists. I'm not talking about scientists. I'm talking about a paradigm that has shaped our third millennial consciousness. And I'm certainly not saying that people who hold these views today are not able to live decent moral lives as good citizens, that they don't make valuable contributions to our community. Of course, of course, of course. However, because that's not the point, what I'm saying is it's extremely difficult to find meaning when in the end everything that you've lived for, every relationship that you've had, all your life experiences, nada, zero, zilch, it's nothing. It's kind of hard, isn't it, to hold on to a purpose in life. I suppose what makes it so hard for us as humans is that we have a sense, don't we? Any culture, we have a sense down here that there's such a thing called eternity. That really somewhere life goes on and on. It doesn't end like this. And that's why we struggle. Every one of us has down deep, there's got to be more. This thing goes on. Now look, if we were dogs or chickens or what, oysters, they're not going to sit around thinking about quack, quack, quack. By the way, that's not a chicken, that's a duck. Quack, 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 how long are we going to live? It doesn't, an animal doesn't care. We are human creatures, human animals. It's a problem for us because we can contemplate our finiteness in contrast to what we conceive of an infinity, something that goes on and on. We just know, I don't. But something surely does. It's numinous, but it's in our hearts. And that's why it becomes a problem for us. Because when we realize what came before us and the little spark of life that we have now, and we already know what's waiting for us, oh my, is this really all there is? Something in the core of our being simply doesn't want this to end. Which is why we struggle. I mean, if this is the prevailing model and it's true, how am I supposed to find meaning? Talking with Linda just a moment ago, I'm searching for a point. What is the point of my life? I'm not totally sure, ladies and gentlemen, what radical change in the meaning of human existence can come from the switching, the movement of a single preposition. But let me put on the screen for you an atheist apologist named Anthony Flew, who argued, I'll put his words up here, that though there's no meaning to life, there's meaning in life. And what's up with that? I mean, to, in, what does it matter? If there's no meaning, there's no meaning. Although if some claim, look, this helps me deal with my own experience, I'm willing to accept that. But I want to tell you something. I'm very skeptical of Anthony Flew's claim. I have to be skeptical. There has to be more. In, to, please. Life down to a preposition? And that's why it's hard for all of us. Because deep within our consciousness there is the thought that while eternity goes on, we're going to get left behind. So what do we do? What's the answer? Is there even an answer? Is there any hope for the human race, the third millennial civilization, this Western civilization that you and I are part of? Any hope of finding a possibility of an answer? My point, and please pardon me for repeating myself, but my point is, if we stick with the prevailing scientific model, that is the naturalistic, materialistic, evolutionary model, it's hard to see how there will ever be any hope at all. We're just material beings. So get a grip on it, will you? Get a grip. Grab for a little pleasure while you can. It's about all you're going to get. And get on with it. In the end, die. In the end, rot in one of those cemetery cities that we are all headed toward. Whoa. Something about that just does not make sense. It doesn't meld with all the other aspects of reality that you and I already know. I mean, come on. Thinking about your friends, thinking about your family, thinking about your next door neighbors. You mean there's nothing to this? It doesn't matter? All these strong bonds, all these relationships. What's up with that? Hey, come on. Someday, you young adults, someday you're going to have kids. You're going to walk through the forest holding the hand of that little girl, that little boy, and you're going to stop and you're going to examine that beautiful fallen leaf. No meaning to that. You're going to see the colorful butterfly as it goes by and your child exclaims. No meaning to that. You're going to shovel your neighbor's snow if you live in Scotland. You're going to mow your neighbor's lawn someday. No meaning to that. You're going to visit somebody in the hospital. Maybe a homeless, maybe the guy playing the guitar in the tube, you're going to throw a coin into his guitar case. No meaning in that? Is that what you're suggesting? We're all just heading to that cemetery city? Give me a break. You step back and you ask yourself, okay, scientific, materialistic paradigm, what do you have to offer me? Ladies and gentlemen, if you step back and that's all she wrote, is that all we end up with? Does it make sense? It may be possible, but I have to tell you something. It is not sensible. So where do we turn? Fair question. Camus. Oh, Camus. Camus says life in the end is meaningless. He calls it absurd. Our hearts tell us otherwise. Where do we turn? For one more moment, let's move from the world of relationships. We're talking about relationships over here. Let's talk about the material world itself, how finely tuned it is. Look at, These fingers, every single one of these fingers has a purpose, does it not? I have a friend who's lost 2 of his fingers. He's lonely for those 2. Our eyes, our noses, everything about us has purpose. The law of gravity, the air, the sun, everything you can think of essentially has a purpose, does it not? So what's the purpose? Now it's true he later backtracked, but physicist Steven Weinberg uttered this famous line. He halfway backtracked. Here's his line. I'll put it on the screen for you. The more the universe seems comprehensible, the more it seems pointless. But when you have the scientific model as your prevailing paradigm, that's all you're going to ever end up with. Pointless, meaningless. Camus, Bertrand Russell. I don't know formal logic. Some of you are brilliant at logic. It's hard for me to conclude how all that seems so logical and reasonable ends up with nothing. I mean, can I put this new formula I've come up with on the screen? How could this ever be true? 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 equals 0. You may be thinking, you know what, I'm about ready to pull the plug on my own life. I'm thinking suicide myself because all of my 1 plus 1 plus 1s have ended up 0. I want to tell you something, my friend, your life has not ended up 0. As Peter was telling us a moment ago, there's somebody who cares for you. There's somebody who wants to hear your story. You're not on this planet by accident. Your life has incredible worth. 1 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1 ought to equal 8 or 9 or 10, not 0. So what's the alternative? Ladies and gentlemen, there is only one alternative. If you are a thinking human being tonight, you know that one alternative. And I humbly suggest to you that that alternative is clear. If it's not this ending in hopeless meaninglessness, the only alternative possible is that there is a being. There is a God. There is a Creator that has put deep within your heart the stamp of His eternity. And He has a purpose for you. That your life has meaning because of who He is. A God who offers eternal life. Who says you were never meant to end in a cemetery city. A God who says, I have the answer to your meaninglessness. I want to quote a single line from Scripture. One line seems to unlock the conundrum we're facing today. I put it on the screen for you. And the world passes away. This is from a little book called 1 John 2:17. And the world passes away, but the one that does the will of God lives forever. I got to quote Shakespeare again. That's a wow declaration. Because both worldviews are tucked away in that single line. Okay, the top line says the world passes away. That's just that's exactly, precisely what we've been describing this evening. The purely scientific, purely naturalistic observation that says the fires will deplete and it will be over one day for the entire universe. The world passes away. Okay, that may be one worldview, but there's an alternate worldview. And the second half of that line reads, the one that does the will of God lives forever. A totally different, a radically different option and worldview. Isn't it? Ew. It presents the only hope I know of. There is no other hope short of that alternative. You have your choice. Camus or a three-letter word in English. G-O-D. Your choice. Unless you're willing to concede that all that you are and all the relationships that you have had and all of your life experience when it comes to the end is 0. You have only one choice. Put the O in the middle of a word. G-O-D. You know, I began this lecture talking about Albert Camus, one of the greatest writers of the 20th century. Fascinating story emerged just a few years ago. Nobody knew this until an old minister in Paris wrote a book and announced to the world in that book that he had been privately meeting with this brilliant atheist French philosopher. Camus had apparently looked up the aged cleric because he was beginning to sense the meaninglessness of his own theory of meaninglessness. And so he fell into conversation with this minister, and they met time after time. And in one of those visits, I have his words right here, Camus said to the man, "I'm searching for something that the world is not giving me. It's got to be more." And then one day, they're having their little private conversation. Camus looks into the face of the minister, and he says, I want to know about baptism. The aged cleric wrote, he said, I about fell off my chair when Camus asked about baptism. Camus, the atheist? They said, okay, next time we're together, that will be the subject of our conversation. Well, there was no next time. Albert Camus was killed in a car wreck just days later. All for nothing. Was it all for nothing? You decide.
Thank you so much for joining us. We've been thrilled to have you with us for this programme. If you want to get in touch, we've raised issues that you want to discuss further or given you some food for thought, then you can contact us. You can get in touch via our website. That address is lifedevelopment.info, or by calling us on 01923 665544, or you can send us an email, and that address is ask@lifedevelopment.info.
Living as we do in the third millennium with unprecedented scientific advancement, could it be that our human longing for meaning and purpose and eternity was put inside of us by someone who already lives in eternity and who wishes for us to join him there? Think about it. Join us again next time for more of The Evidence.
Bye for now.